Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back to News Dose. And those countdown timers from Capcom and Atlus did end today, both of which were highly interesting. Really, I think if you like fighting games, you're going to be absolutely thrilled with what Capcom had to announce here, as they had multiple games to announce. And then when it comes to Atlus, it's a little surprising, but they actually remembered Xbox existed after all. Now, as far as Nintendo goes, that's a different story because Atlus always does something strange. So, of course, we're going to go over that today, plus plenty more. In fact, let's just go and get things started off with Microsoft and that Activision Blizzard acquisition. Of course, this acquisition has been massive, and really it's one of the biggest game stories in history, so there's just been constant questions when it comes to this buyout. And well, some more answers did arise here in an SEC filing that provides insight into the Microsoft Activision buyout. Now, this includes the timeline of when everything happened, and then also some of the competition that Microsoft had. Well, that's actually the interesting part that we'll get into here in just a second, but it has now been revealed that Phil Spencer proposed a deal on November 19th for $80 a share. Now, this is actually really interesting because this is only 3 days after that big report that Bobby Kotick, the CEO of Activision Blizzard, knew about some of the misconduct that was happening in the company. This was a major story at the time, and there was a lot of people that was very upset about everything that was going on over at Activision Blizzard, rightfully so, and even Phil Spencer, he came out shortly after and said this: "We're evaluating all aspects of our relationship with Activision Blizzard and making ongoing proactive adjustments." And well, he meant that quite literal. Those proactive judgments was basically to just buy out the company and to fix the problem themselves. So I think most of us already kind of assumed this, but yes, those scandals very much did play a huge role into this acquisition here for Activision Blizzard. The more interesting part of this SEC filing, though, was actually that it did reveal that Activision did talk with 5 other companies besides just Microsoft. Now, they did not reveal which companies these were. We do know from a previous report, though, that Facebook was one of these companies. Now, based off the cost of this acquisition, I think we can kind of guess as to some of these other companies that was approached by Activision. And I mean, we're talking about companies such as Google, Apple, Amazon, these big corporations that can put down that type of money. And I think that takes me back to what I've been saying about this acquisition all along, and that's that I believe that Microsoft was actually the best outcome for the future of gaming. I believe that there would have been a lot more concern if a company like Google, Facebook, or Apple would have acquired Activision Blizzard instead. Next up, one trend that we have been seeing here as of recent when it comes to Square Enix are these HD 2D re-releases. Now, this all kind of started off with Octopath Traveler. Octopath Traveler was a game that was clearly inspired by games such as Final Fantasy VI with that timeless pixel art, but then they combined it with these more HD modern visuals, and it just pops off screen. It just looks outstanding, and this is a game that did perform very well in the market, and since then, it seems like Square Enix, they kind of realized that they're sitting on a bit of a gold mine here. They have a lot of beloved games that would really benefit from having that HD 2D makeover, and that is something that we are starting to see. Over the last year, they have announced a couple of these HD 2D releases, including Dragon Quest, and then here recently, Live Alive. Now, that one is still a big surprise considering this is the first time it's ever going to release outside of Japan, but it seems like this is just going to be the start of these HD 2D releases. This was revealed over on a podcast where the Square Enix Asano team did reveal that they are going to be working on more HD 2D releases and remakes going forward. They did say that the focus on these type of games actually comes directly from the Square Enix president Yosuke Matsuda, which began with a list of potential candidates. Now, we don't know exactly what these candidates are just yet, but I mean, they have a lot to work with. I mean, they could do games like Chrono Trigger, Final Fantasy VI would be a big winner here. There's also some other kind of hidden gems, as you will. They did do this with Live Alive, so they could also do it with something like Terranigma. That one could be an interesting one. Parasite Eve would be a little unconventional, but that one would be a cool one as well. But I mean, yeah, Square Enix just has a ton of games that they can work with from the 90s, and it'll be really interesting to see what comes of these HD 2D releases. And really, it's not just the visual art style that makes these games exciting, but also having voiceover can just bring an extra little bit of life to some of these retro style of games. Now, speaking of Japanese games, we need to talk about the Shin Megami Tensei and Persona developer, Atlus. Last week, they did put up a countdown timer that seemed to be teasing something when it comes to soul hackers. This is something we talked about last week, and, well, now it is official. Soul Hackers 2 will be out this year on August 26th. And that right there is exciting, but this announcement was a little bit more surprising than what you might have originally thought. Okay, so Soul Hackers 2 will be coming over to the PlayStation 5 and PlayStation 4, which there's no big surprise there, but then it's also going to be releasing on the Xbox Series X and S, as well as the Xbox One, Windows PC, and then also Steam. And all of this is on day one, August 26th. That is a very welcome surprise to see that Soul Hackers 2 will be getting more of this multi-platform treatment. This is something that fans have been requesting for a while because Atlus, they make really good games, but they would also get a lot more recognition if they released on multiple platforms. Now, we'll kind of get back to this here in just a moment because this is still not perfect, but to see that Xbox and Steam is included on day one is huge, especially for Xbox. In fact, the last time that Xbox got a new Atlus game was way back in 2014 when they released Persona 4 Arena Ultimax for the Xbox 360. Yeah, it's been a very long time, but finally here, Atlus is kind of acknowledging the existence of Xbox consoles once again. So that is a big step in the right direction, though I would still like to see some of these Persona games head over to Xbox as well. That's the franchise I think a lot of fans are waiting for, but still, at least you have Soul Hackers 2 here, and that is a nice inclusion. It just seems like, once again, JRPGs are definitely growing on the Xbox platform, so definitely good to see there. Like I said before, though, this announcement was still not perfect because one platform that unfortunately is missing is actually the Nintendo Switch. And this was surprising for various reasons. One being that JRPGs typically perform very well on the Nintendo Switch because there is a big JRPG crowd on the Switch, and then also over in Japan, the Nintendo Switch is the dominant platform. So from that perspective, Soul Hackers 2 would be the perfect fit for the Switch. But then beyond that, the original Soul Hackers was actually remade specifically for the 3DS, where it brought that game back to life. So here, seeing the sequel skip Nintendo, it is a little surprising, but if you actually look at the trailer, you can see that this game does look pretty good. I imagine that their decision to not include the Nintendo Switch, or at least for right now, probably just comes down to technical power. But that is something to keep in mind as well, because a lot of times when it comes to the Nintendo Switch, they get these staggered releases, where a game will originally be made for the PlayStation and Xbox, and then later on get ported over to the Nintendo Switch so they can solely focus on that console. So I wouldn't completely give up hope here. Maybe Soul Hackers 2 does eventually come to the Nintendo Switch, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see what happens here. Still though, to see Atlus bring a Shin Megami Tensei game over to Xbox but not the Nintendo Switch, you can imagine the community is a little surprised, to say the least, but this still is major news for Xbox. This is something that fans have been asking for years, and, well, it's finally happening. I do kind of wonder, though, with this coming over to Xbox and Xbox Game Pass continuously growing, especially for some of these Japanese games, I'm curious if this gets the Xbox Game Pass Day 1 treatment. That's just me speculating, of course, but I actually do believe that that could be very beneficial for both Xbox and also Atlus at the same time. Let's go and talk about this other countdown now, and this one is coming from Capcom. Now, we did talk about this one last week, and there was a lot of speculation that maybe this could be Street Fighter 6, maybe it could be a Resident Evil 4 remake. I did say that I was kind of leaning on the side of it being Street Fighter 6 just because it was happening at the same time as a Street Fighter tournament. It just kind of made sense, and, well, it is now official. Street Fighter 6 has been revealed, though the trailer itself wasn't exactly what we were hoping for. This was more or less just a teaser, an announcement of an announcement. Basically, they just revealed a small teaser trailer here that showed bearded Ryu, which is actually quite interesting, and then also Luke. Now, from my understanding, Luke will be playing a bigger role in Street Fighter 6, which is why that they're showing him in this specific teaser right here. But the one thing that you can kind of take away from this trailer here is the visuals. The visuals and animations here are very impressive. Something that I did continuously see leading up to the announcement of Street Fighter 6 is, please Capcom, give this game a budget. And based off the small glimpse that we're seeing here, it very much looks like fans got their wish. It looks like this game is going to have some high production values, especially for a fighting game. And I've been seeing some speculation that maybe Capcom could be using the Resident Evil engine here, which we all kind of know the Resident Evil engine looks very good. We have seen Capcom use that engine with various games, including Resident Evil 2 Remake, Resident Evil 3, and then even with Monster Hunter Rise. So I could imagine them using that once again with Street Fighter 6. That's kind of the thing about this announcement though, because this really was just a teaser for Street Fighter 6. They didn't really release any type of information and just simply said that more information will be coming this summer. And I know the question that everybody's going to be asking, what platforms will Street Fighter 6 be available on? Obviously with Street Fighter 5, that was exclusive for PlayStation and PC. This time around though, there is some hope that maybe Street Fighter 6 will come to Xbox as well, though at the same time, I will say that there's currently a rumor floating around that PlayStation might have money-hatted Street Fighter 6 once again. Now, currently, this is not confirmed. This is coming from the Insider Special, Nick, but I would just kind of take this with a grain of salt until we get the official announcement sometime this summer. Hopefully, though, it will be multi-platform with crossplay, because that's always a good thing for fighting games, which keeps the community a little bit more lively throughout the years. Now, that wasn't quite all for Capcom though, because they did actually have one more sneaky big announcement here, and this was for Capcom Fighting Collection. This includes 10 different fighting games in a single bundle, all with online gameplay. Yeah, that is the huge part right there, but let's just go and take a look at the games that are included in this collection. This will include Darkstalkers, Darkstalkers Revenge, Vampire Savior, Vampire Hunter 2, Vampire Savior 2, Red Earth, Cyberbots, Super Gem Fighters Mini Mix, Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo, and then also Hyper Street Fighter 2. That is a lot of good games, and to see that all of these will have online play is such a cool inclusion. I mean, I've seen fans ask for a lot of these games over the years, especially when it comes to Darkstalkers, and even though this isn't necessarily a brand new release or anything like that, see these games come back with online play, which is probably the most important thing when it comes to fighting games. This is actually a very hype announcement, and the cool thing is that we're not going to have to wait overly long to play this game. It will be out on June 24th for Xbox, PlayStation, the Nintendo Switch, and on PC. It's even getting a physical release so you can add it to your collection, so if you like fighting games, even in the slightest, you might want to check this one out on June 24th. Let's go and take a look at the poll of the day though. So last week, Nintendo did announce that the Wii U and the 3DS eShops will be closing sometime in 2023. Obviously, fans are not particularly happy with this situation, but I wanted to know just how many of you all are actually affected by this decision, specifically when it comes to the Wii U. The Wii U, as we all know, was not necessarily the best-selling console in the world, and it was more or less a failure. So because of that, I asked you all, do you or have you ever owned a Wii U? And as you can see here, only 19% of you said yes, you currently own a Wii U, 15% of you said you used to own one, and then 64% of you said no, you never owned a Wii U. So yeah, you can just kind of see once again, based off of these results, that the Wii U just was not a resounding success, and it's probably one of the reasons that Nintendo just kind of wants to move on permanently from supporting the Wii U going forward. It's still an unfortunate situation though, and I can only really speak for myself here, but I was one of those people that actually bought the Nintendo Wii U when it first launched. I was actually really excited about this particular console. Short story about myself, but I did grow up in the 90s as a Nintendo kid playing games on the Super Nintendo, Nintendo 64, Game Boy Advance, and you know, I loved Nintendo growing up. Then there was the GameCube, and I absolutely loved that console. But then here came the Nintendo Wii. I just was not a fan of the Wii because I just don't like motion controls. So when they did eventually announce the Wii U, I was really excited about this console because it seemed like Nintendo was going back into more of that traditional direction for their consoles. I was very excited about it. And then when it came out, I do think that the Wii U actually had some good games, and I think it has kind of proved that years later, because if you kind of look at it now, some of the better games available on the Nintendo Switch are actually Wii U ports. I mean, the best selling selling Nintendo Switch game is a Wii U port, being Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. So yes, I do think that the Wii U had some good games, but the marketing for that console it was pretty bad. A lot of people at the time just thought it was a Wii tablet and didn't even really realize that it was a brand new console. And that just goes down to the marketing for Nintendo, and you can kind of see that they faced some problems with the Wii U right out of the gate. It didn't get the third-party support that it needed. The casual crowd kind of left Nintendo at the time, and Nintendo wanted to move on from that console as quick as possible. And then here with the Switch, they have just had this massive turnaround. Now, that is the one silver lining, I think, when it comes to the Wii U eShop closing, is that at least when it comes to the Wii U, a lot of their bigger releases have since been ported over to the Switch, so those games aren't necessarily being lost on the Wii U all these years later. Hopefully they will continue to finish that library off, though, with games like Xenoblade X and then maybe even Star Fox Zero. Anyways, though, that's it for this episode, but if you liked the video, don't forget the bell notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Also, if you'd like to support the channel through Patreon, thank you for making this content possible. Peace out.